Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on AI-powered preventive maintenance. My name is Simran, and I'm the marketing leader here at Tavant. Today, we are diving into a topic that is transforming the way industries approach maintenance. No longer are we waiting for machines to fail and scramble to fix them. The future is here, and it is powered by AI. Imagine the power of predicting issues before they happen and preventing them with all those costly downtimes. That's the kind of game changing potential AI brings to the table. Our speakers today will share how AI is not just a buzzword, but a real impactful tool being used across industries today. Today we have Jatinear Givens, Data and Analytics Leader at Serta Simmons Bedding, and Jonathan Kent, IoT and Data Leader at Tavant. Jatinear is a strategic leader at data management and advanced analytics with over 20 years of experience in transforming industries like manufacturing, retail, and defense through innovative data solutions. John, on the other hand, is an IoT telematics and field service technology leader from over 20 years. Before I hand it over to the speakers, a couple of housekeeping points. This webinar is being recorded and you will receive a copy of the playback. We would love to hear questions from you, so please use Q&A at the bottom of your screen to type any questions you may have for our speakers. And with that, I'd now like to invite John to take it away.
Thanks,
John,
Simran.
over to you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the introduction. Everybody, thanks for joining today. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, so I'm excited that to have you all here today. I'll admit I'm from Atlanta. I've been here for about 25 years, but I'm originally from the Northeast, so I'll try to make sure that my voice doesn't pick up a whole lot of pace. Jatinear, I'm going to be relying on you to keep me in check to make sure I don't go off the deep end here. When I start talking about this stuff, I tend to go off. So, okay. But first, Jatinear, thanks for being here with us today and helping lead this discussion. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so everybody, just a quick word about Tavant. It's the organization I'm working with. We're a leading provider of innovative technology solutions. So I work with teams to leverage AI and create intuitive user experiences that kind of drives business transformation and kind of that North Star of where we all want to be with the data that we have at our fingers. Our experience crosses, various industries, including manufacturing and automotive, HVAC, aftermarket services, and even pre-sales. But Tavant's also deeply rooted on the financial sector and mortgage industry and media. So I'm happy to have be part of the organization and work with them today. So moving to the next slide, just talking about IoT and AI and telematics and kind of the convergence of all the things that we're moving to today. You can go to the next slide. It's all good. So over this past decade, we've seen an incredible surge in IoT and telematics devices, right, being implemented across multiple industries. Just 10 years ago, there were about 3.8 billion IoT devices worldwide. Fast forward 10 years, and we're around 16.7 billion. So that exponential growth, it really underscores how IoT is becoming an integral part across various industries and especially across the aftermarket space. But with widespread adoption comes a set of challenges. One of the major challenges we see is just the sheer volumes of data, right? And it can be overwhelming to manage and analyze. And as the devices grow, so does that amount of data. As a matter of fact, 10 years ago, the amount of IoT telematics data collected annually, it's grown about 6,000% from 2013 to today. To put that in perspective, that's 73 zettabytes of data annually. And if you don't know what a zettabyte is, it's the equivalent to, that number is equivalent to 73 trillion gigabytes every year of data. Next slide, Jake, if you could. So integrating that IoT and telematics data from sources like your ERP and your CRM and your case management systems, merging all that together can be complex. It can be time consuming, it can be challenging, but it's really incredibly valuable if you're when you're building your AI powered models, specifically around preventative maintenance. Ensuring that data is clean and accurate and reliable, it's critical for making informed decisions and driving actions within the organization. So IoT and telematics, they hold a wealth of insights. And when properly harnessed, they can significantly impact aftermarket operations. For instance, Predictive maintenance can be enhanced by analyzing usage patterns and performance metrics. And then with that, you can allow for interventions that decrease costly breakdowns. And the data can also reveal trends and anomalies that might not be apparent through traditional methods, right? About just looking at charts and graphs. And so when you uncover these hidden insights, the OEM partners we're working with, they're driving multiple efficiencies, reducing operating costs, warranty claims, service costs, OpEx, and even branching out into things like gaining key market insights. They can do targeted individual marketing in the future. So many of these organizations, they recognize the value of AI and are planning to adopt these technologies in the near future. As you can see in the slide, some industry-wide numbers. And the widespread adoption, really, it's a really exciting time because this drives the AI-powered predictive model across multiple sectors. So I'm excited to talk about that today. And Jatinear, that's why you're here. I'm getting ahead of myself. So why don't we dive into exploring some of these trends further and having conversation with you, because again, I could talk about this stuff all day long. So Jatinear, first off, again, thanks for being here today. You got 23 years of experience with data and analytics, retail, automotive, nonprofits, public schools, fintech, Department of Defense, what Simran mentioned. Thanks for your almost 20 years of service in the military. But can you tell me a little bit about those experiences? I mean, they're varied. How do you apply your passion for analytics in those organizations and throughout your career?
Oh wow. First again, thanks for having me on this platform. Really excited to be here. Just, appreciate yourself and Tavant for putting this together so I can speak about something that's passionate to myself as well. As you mentioned, 23 years doing this, and I'm still growing and still learning. But how to apply, my passion for this is just always trying to learn the next thing, always trying to understand, how to move the needle, how to be more advanced with the technologies, how to understand the question before it's asked, being more proactive to solutions versus being reactive. And a lot of that is going to come out in this conversation too, as we start talking about IoT and predictive, right? Being predictive meaning, essentially saying the same thing of, knowing that, what question is going to be asked before that question is asked. So for me, applying my passion for that, and utilizing it throughout my career has just been trying to stay in a loop and stay involved.
And when you say staying involved, you're talking about getting direct feedback from your stakeholders internally. Like, how do you measure that success as you're working on those kind of models?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've authored like Analytics Center of Excellences. I usually, engage senior leadership, just trying to understand what the pain points are, understanding what the actual OKRs or what's the business strategy, what's the business goals, what are the enablers that's trickled down, and then trying to understand, hey, what kind of what kind of KPIs and metrics that we can put in place to help people reach those objectives, right? What kind of processes can we put in place to help them reach those objectives? So keeping in touch with them helps me understand the pain points, but keeping my finger on, what's happening with the technology stacks, what's happening with Azure, what's happening with AWS, what's happening with GCP. Even, just from the AI component alone, there's other laterals that are spinning out, the open AI concept, H2O, and several other platforms, cloud-based platforms that are spinning and crafting their own components, trying to stay not ahead, but trying to stay locked in step with understanding what they're saying, what kind of research is going on from Forrester or Gartner as they pull in information and crowdsource that information in, trying to know, what questions are being asked, what answers can people not get. So that's what I mean by really staying involved.
So the analysts are getting even more analytic information than they ever have.
Yeah, I mean, I actually predict a big analyst boom within the next 5 years, to be honest with you, with all the data circulating, as you just mentioned.
So I'm going to circle back to that in a minute because I want to talk about that because I know an important part of these modelings are validation and stuff. So let me hold that thought for just a second. But let's jump back to I mentioned in in the intro a little bit about the vast amounts of data that, from various business systems, right? Not just telematics and IoT data, but like different platforms and applications that go unused or underutilized. Um, what's your view of that? What's your view of this untapped data, being able to derive business insights from it, such as predicting equipment failures, what we're talking about here today, right?
Mhm.
How do companies better leverage this information, and how do you see AI playing a role in that strategy? And let me further preface to say, you know, um, for you specifically, how do you make sure that you're maintaining a holistic kind of view of those data sources as opposed to a more potentially narrow view, department by department head, where leaders tend to focus on their own business systems as opposed to the whole ecosystem?
Yeah, yeah. So those are excellent layered questions, and I'm gonna try to dive into each one.
Third
But
part
first,
last. I'm just kidding.
what was that?
No, I said you can take the third part last.
No, I mean, actually, let me take the last thing that you just said first. When you said how do people focus on a holistic view of the data versus compartmentalized components of the data. And that's always having that data strategy that involves centralizing data and letting your IT experts govern that data so that analysts and data scientists can actually do their job and focus on analyzing data versus engineering data. And then the IT experts can focus on governing data. So as they centralize the data from different components, let them be, house and govern that central repository and feed out of that. But centralizing that data, there's a lot into that. Some data assets, are readily available to be pulled in, but some gets into some of the conversation today about IoT. Going into another part of your conversation, we start talking about untapped data. I actually, and you mentioned something that I was going to touch on too. I was having a conversation with my son the other day. We were in the kitchen and I said, hey, do you know how much data is going to be generated by 2025? And just some studies have said that that's going to be, like in exabytes per day, like 400 something exabytes per day. And to make that relative, that's like what, 1 billion gigabytes? That's a lot, right? But when you look at that, that's untapped data. Okay. Some of that's untapped data. The untapped data is the data that we would say, hey, is not sitting in a system ready for us right now. But I furthered that exploration and said, hey, like 30% of that data will be based on IoT. 30%. So if you look at that and you say, okay, if 30% of it is based on IoT, I really can only get a full picture with 70% of my data. So when you start looking at the importance of that, if I'm a senior leader for, let's say, supply chain or logistics, if I want to build a forecast model for supply chain, you're saying, okay, I can give you 70% of the data. And then the supply chain leader is going to say, well, no, I want 100%. I say, okay, I can give you 100% of 70%. Unless you put some IoT component in to pull in data that's relevant, which is that
Right.
30%. And if that you get that 30% is really more relative than the 70%, if you follow
Yep.
what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
No, I live in that world. Yeah.
but that untapped data is, that's really relevant, significant, and it's really overlooked. When it comes to equipment maintenance, that data can be transformative. Even though much of it may sit unused across various systems, platforms, and applications, it holds the potential to reveal patterns and trends that can predict equipment failures before they occur. I mean, to leverage that untapped data, companies need to focus on two things: integration and accessibility. The integration
Mhm.
comes in with that IoT component, right? And accessibility is making it available once you pull it in. Because once you consolidate the data from the disparate sources into a unified platform, which is something that you just mentioned, organizations can create a holistic view of their operations. I mean, then that comprehensive data set can become the foundation for advanced analytics and AI-driven insights. And
Yep.
AI is going to play that crucial role because now you're talking about analyzing a lot of data. And in addition to that, you can put together these machine learning algorithms to actually analyze historical data to identify early signs of equipment degradation or failure. I mean, algorithms can also detect correlations that may not be immediately apparent to a human looking at it, a service person looking at something, or just a human analyst looking at some data. But over time, the AI can refine the predictions, becoming to make everything just increasingly become more accurate, so that you can have better forecasting,
Yep.
and you can forecast your equipment failures.
Yeah, I mean, the continuously learning model is great. I mean, I'm all about learning for the rest of my life, but it's nice to have the machine do the learning once in a while. So, well, can you share some examples about how those analytics have helped you avoid downtime? Again, from the preventative maintenance standpoint, I know you and I spoke last week a little bit about your time in the service, and you were saying that you were running analysis on, was it planes and jets and
Yeah.
stuff for the military?
So yeah,
That you weren't even just
still in my
looking
thunder,
at,
John.
yeah, you weren't even just looking at preventing your maintenance, but you talked a little bit about how you did resource planning to make sure that you're going to have the right mechanics in the right place, and be able to use that plane when you needed it. Can you talk a little about that?
Sure. So yeah. So you think about it, imagine, and again, thank you for bringing that up again. My military service, Air Force in particular. One of my responsibilities was being accountable for the analysis department, and that analysis department analyzed data related to our warcraft. And our warcraft in this case would be fighter jets and other carrier planes like C-130s. Well, imagine a mission where you need 5,000 troops 5,000 miles away tomorrow, and you have a few C-130s sitting there, and there's no time for, hey, something happened. Imagine there's a mission where we have to send some fighter jets a few thousand miles away tomorrow, and oh, by the way, we're partnering up with another country, so they're depending on our support to be there on time on that said day. Now imagine that. Do you think there's an opportunity for an equipment failure within that week?
Not that in succeeding.
So being able to have some type of predictive processes in place helps you with that, because it's things are just that crucial. But it's the same thing when you start talking about predictive maintenance for equipment, right? It's all about operation and how healthy are you as an organization for your operational logistics. If you're talking about predictive maintenance, how healthy can you be so that you can reach all of your targets, right? And being able to forecast those targets, because you need to tie, that's a missing component. That's that part of that 30% that we just talked about, right? You need to be able to tie that into some of your models. We haven't talked about it yet, but I know you're gonna want to get into stuff like truth sets, but that's part of that. Being able to understand, hey, what data do I need to pull into an algorithm to forecast, like for deliveries, forecast, inventory needed, forecast, when can I ship this? All those things have to come into play. If not, you're only using 70% of your data, and you're forecasting things off 70% of the data, and you're missing 30% of that data. But
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna elaborate a little more, but go ahead.
Well, I was gonna ask you if you could elaborate. You talked about true sets, like, so how do you approach baseline data cleansing, true sets? How do you begin to approach that with these models?
Well, I mean, baselines, those kind of things, it goes along just taking, what kind of data are you generating from the actual equipment right now, right? When it comes to cleansing data, you need to use that in any type of analytic process, whether it be predictive, basic analytics, BI, AI, whatever. The teams that normally work for me, that is one of the core things that we hone in on, because you need to get in there and understand, hey, what kind of duplicates you have, what kind of missing data you have, what kind of anomalies you have, what kind of outliers you have, and be able to get with the business to address those concerns before you start doing the things that you need to do. But guess what? AI helps with that. It helps you do a lot of those things that you can build within the model. But being able to do that and not only cleanse that data, but figure out that 30% that you're missing and other data components you're missing helps you get a better truth set. Really digging down into truth sets is probably a longer conversation than we have time for the scope of this call. However, just understanding that all that ties into getting a good truth set so that you can have a great AI model to predict what you need to predict. Now, you also asked me, you was asking me about some specific components and some specific things that you would some benefits, right? But I would also say if you look at machinery when it comes to maintenance, right? Right now, let's say if you, for an example, you get a car. In your car, it says, okay, change the oil every 6,000 miles, or, within 6 months, whatever, 3 to 4 months, whatever, right? Well, they came up with that based off standards. When Detroit, built this car and put it on the assembly line, they didn't know that Jonathan was going to get this. He stayed in a hilly area and he was going to buy this car and he was pulling hills every day. So he's going to process more oil through a system. It's going to burn out more quicker. They didn't know that you're going to burn your transmission out further. I mean, quicker than more people, because it was based on how you used your car. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to machines, right? We all have some type of a maintenance schedule based on standards, and that's okay, but you can really under or over utilize resources if you use standard-based approaches to scheduling maintenance. But when you get into more predictive based on the specific usage of a piece of equipment, you save a lot of time and a lot of money from doing that, because now the predictive model can actually look specifically at that machine and be able to tell, specifically when it's time to change something versus the standard, right? You'll be able to see, hey, when something's getting ready to go down, and it'll allow you to fix that before something fails, so you don't have this emergency fix that you have to do. And oh, by the way, you just blown your target and you've just blown your logistics.
Yeah, and your resource management and everything that goes along with it, and your parts management. Yeah. So I know you are passionate about the analytics and all the business benefits it can drive. But so my last question for you, in this moment, we might have to continue this some other time again. I know you and I will personally, but
yeah, absolutely.
When you come to the business leaders that you were speaking about in the different groups, how do you help influence those stakeholders, right? In going down that AI predictive type of model. I know we talked about it, that industry term at one of our first slides about it's got a 10x ROI for the folks that have implemented it here today.
Right.
How are you seeing any challenges with your stakeholders and kind of getting them along for that ride, or are they pretty engaged?
Well, I mean, you're always going to get, more engagement from the people who are feeling the largest and most immediate impact, right? Who sees the immediate opportunity, because you need those people to help, prove out the ROI. But in proving out the ROI, you start looking at things like direct cost savings, right? Which you can say direct cost savings from reduced maintenance expenses and minimized downtime. You start thinking about other factors like impact on operational efficiency, how AI can optimize maintenance schedules and reduce unnecessary maintenance activities. You also can factor in metrics or something like improvements in safety and compliance. And anytime you talk about safety and compliance, all ears perk up, right? So those things help. But in addition, you can also start talking about scalability and long-term benefits. When you think about it, and I always say, and I also put a little paper out about this on my LinkedIn, but my approach to beginning an AI journey is always crawl, walk, run, right? So let's look at a machine. If you implemented predictive maintenance in one machine, and then you proved out the ROI, let's say it saved you $250,000 a year, and all the things we just mentioned, that was the ROI, that's one machine. And then you look around, you say, I have 10 machines. Now you look from a scalability perspective, you're like, oh wow, just by doing it on one machine, and I see that I'm saving $250,000 a year, and I have 10 more machines. I mean, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but you know, you get it. But you can see that, and then you say, okay, now I have 10 different facilities. You start seeing how you can scale it out based on one thing. But when you
Yep.
people, we need to get involved with that. People like maintenance and operations, because those folks, they know the challenges and opportunities. That's what I mentioned before. Those are the people who are going to be really driving, because they understand their right is near and dear to them. They face it every day. You're going to want to get IT involved, because that's the team who's going to make sure the right IT infrastructure is in place. And they're either going to host, manage, or facilitate the AI model that's going to be within the infrastructure and the IoT components. And you're also going to want to get finance involved. Finance is going to play a crucial role in validating the ROI calculations and ensuring alignment with the broader business strategy.
Yeah, and we didn't even touch on customer satisfaction and NPS and all those other fun things that go the trickle down effect, right?
I don't know how long you have for this call, but we can go for it.
Well, I mean that brand loyalty is critical, or that that brand journey is a critical path, right? And it's hard to quantify, when somebody's gonna or not buy that machine 5 years from now because they felt good about their experience over that journey. But it's proven, and I personally, I believe, and I think you're on the same page as me, that although we might be able to not quantify it today, it's an investment that's going to pay off over time.
Okay.
So we've got about, I think, maybe 10 minutes more before we want to open it up for Q&A. You know me, I'll talk all day. Do you have anything specific you want me to touch on this journey?
I absolutely do. So thank you again for allowing me to be here. But I do have a few questions for you. Now I know when you and I spoke before today's session, you shared that you've been involved with telematics and IoT for just a lot of years, right? Across the
Mhm.
automotive, construction, agriculture, HVAC, even energy systems, and I've read some great
Yeah.
use cases on that. What trends are you noticing in these sectors, and anything cool or exciting that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it touches on what you talked about, and just, for me, the story I run into with a lot of the OEMs that we work with today are, 7, 10 years ago, somebody said, telematics, that's a good idea. Check the box. And they turned it on. They started collecting data. They started gathering a lot of it, but um, but they're not utilizing it, right? It's going underutilized. And so I see this maturity path um, where they're evolving from just gathering data to actually utilizing it for actionable insights. And the convergence of AI over the last 24 months or so has really steamrolled that, or moved it forward very quickly. So a lot of folks are just jumping in, trying it out, kind of figuring out how can we start and just leverage some predictive modeling. So everybody seems to be on that path. I think the stats we have were, over 50, 60, 70% in most sectors are going to utilize AI over the next couple of years. I think it's going to move even faster than that. Because as you test the model and you see that it works, again, starting small, like you mentioned, there's going to be more and more appetite to keep moving it forward and keep moving forward. And then there's the maturity scale of just the technology partnership between you and your technology partners, right? Because once you learn together what worked, what didn't work, you're again exponentially going to get smarter and smarter. So we're seeing that a lot. I have seen some cool stuff of, again, from a telematics perspective. A lot of people think diagnostic trouble codes and engine codes and J1939 and all the things that, again, I could talk about until my wife falls asleep.
Okay.
Yeah, but and that's all important information. But it's really when we start seeing the convergence of the service history data, the warranty information, the stuff you were talking about uh, you know, regional use, use by time of year, right? You're not going to be digging holes above Oklahoma line in after October because there's a freeze line, right? So you can actually see patterns and usage of machines. And when you start implementing that into the whole service kind of approach, we're seeing folks optimizing scheduling. And by that, I mean, we're enabling servicing dealers to be able to proactively reach out to the customer and say, I know you don't use that machine Friday to Sunday. Let me come out and service for you then. Or I know it's October, and I know you're not going to use it again until March based on your historical stuff. And I know you're not due for that 1,500-mile service today, but I'll give you 10% off if you want to come in, or we can go out to you and service it while you're down this month, as opposed to waiting until the spring.
And that
So,
that kind of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that ties into another question I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask you to like tell me a little about your active engagements with OEMs in the realm of predictive maintenance. Like, how are you applying AI models to these projects?
Yeah, sure. I actually, if Jacob's still around, he should be, if I didn't put him to sleep yet. I'm sure you kept him awake, but I've got a picture here that I could show you, just like a snapshot of our dashboard that we use.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm almost seeing it. You're not in
Nice.
presenter mode, but there we go. Yep. So again, this is just a snapshot of it, but uh, and and you don't have to delve too much into this, but it's about bringing those actionable insights, right, to folks, and so they know exactly what they need to worry about, exactly the things they need to care about. And so for the last several years, a lot of people are utilizing those DTC codes and other things coming off construction and ag equipment, even automotive, to drive some of those actions, like, oh, something ran out, or the def fluid's bad. We better tell the customer they need to change that. Um, but in the predictive model, it changes all around. So now we look at predictive part failures based on warranty history, right? And and then we drive that backwards to those codes to be able to say, we understand that this machine in this kind of conditions, in this atmosphere, in this altitude, this time of year, is going to perform in such a baseline way. More than likely, based on the way it's acting today, we're going to have a part failure, and it's going to be this part, and it's going to cost you this much if you do it break fix, and it's going to cost you this much if you go out there and proactively do it. Moreover, when you start seeing those trends, the quality department's ears perk up, right? And the engineering department's ears perk up, because they go, wow, maybe we can fix this problem before it happens, or maybe we can, do a proactive campaign. When you start talking about proactive campaigns instead of reactive, now you're optimizing your parts fulfillment, your resources in terms of being able to plan effectively and schedule effectively with customers. I mean, all that's very cool stuff, and it impacts operations. I mean, it really makes people's lives better incrementally every day, and operations better. And again, it reinforces that entire brand journey. Oh, this OEM or this manufacturer and their equipment, they care about me. I know every time that they come to me, they're going to have some proactive information or proactive engagement. And I know I mentioned it earlier, and again, I'm probably talking too fast. I can already feel it.
It's okay.
But 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 when you look at like things like sales and marketing, right? So I know that machine's coming due. It's almost at its 5,000 hour point. It's almost going to be out of service. But I also know, based on all the other information I have, that its value on the resale market is, I'm making it up, $50,000.
Right.
The trade-in value is 30. And I can use that as a rental effectively for another 5,000 hours. So let me go target that customer and offer them a turn-in, sell them a new machine, reuse that machine that I've been maintaining all along really well, because they've been following the maintenance plan, and I've been triggering every time there's an event for maintenance. And then I can engage it into a rental fleet and continue to make money off that machine. It predicts it prolongs the life of the machine, and all that really interesting, cool, impactful stuff. That's where I'm really seeing the trends happening today. And
Okay.
again, the excitement and the engagement from the OEMs we're working with. Jacob, thanks for that slide.
So we do have a lot of questions from the audience. We will try and get to most of those, but let me start with the first one. The first question is, what are the most significant trends in AI-powered preventive maintenance that companies should be aware of?
Yeah. Well, for me, and when you say aware of, I would say making sure you have a smart strategic partner. Because the trend is from what just a few things that I've heard, is not getting the right strategic partner, and then it taking you a lot of time to implement. So that's one thing that I would say that companies should be aware of. Make sure that someone actually knows what they're doing to get in there and implement this, because when you have a strategic partner alignment when doing this, you're really depending on them to be SMEs of things like, hey, what system should I use to pull my data in? What KPI should I be looking for? Those kind of things, versus just implementing it and handing it off to you, implementing IoT devices, handing it off to you, and now you're sitting here with a paid for product that you're trying to figure out how to get your business value out of because you don't know predictive maintenance. You're trying to get into predictive maintenance. So I would say one of the trends is, implementers is not so good.
Yeah. Yeah, follow the leaders. People are already making mistakes today, and you can learn from them, right?
Right.
And that's why I'm a strong proponent of people going to industry events, talking to folks like us or other folks, um, different people within your industry or other industries, right? Learn from what people are doing because now's the time that everybody's talking about it. And you're right. I mean, it's not just finding the right partner, finding the right partner that has the right people with them because you can sell the product, but AI, no surprise here, AI data scientists are in high demand today, and it's only going to get higher, right?
Yep.
I know Jatinear's already like, looking at their payroll and figuring out how they're going to support all these folks, but it's important. And just real quick on your point in terms of that engagement or that starting out, right? You mentioned earlier about starting slow, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention just a couple of things because I'm betting some people are like, just how do I get started, right? So if I could touch on that for a second, I would say for anybody out there that's like, I don't know where to start or how to start. The first thing, like you mentioned, ask other people, what are you doing? Who are you working with? Find yourself a trusted partner that you can do a proof of concept. And when you're looking at those proof of concepts, take inventory of what data systems you have. And don't think specifically telematics. Think about your warranty, your ERP, your sales records, your customer interactions. All of that is good information. It's just a matter of getting it put in the right model. And then set clear goals, right? Identify what are you really trying to achieve, and specifically around predictive service. What do you obviously want to reduce downtime, increase uptime, reduce costs, increase customer satisfaction. It's easy to know that that's where you want to go, but write it down, document it, and decide on what metrics you're going to use. And then with that trusted technology partner you find, start small, a pilot program, pick a model, pick a region, a dealer, a whatever that is. Start small and incrementally grow it from there. Grow slowly, gradually scale up. Everybody's going to want to do it today, but these things take a little bit of time. It doesn't take a lot of time to start modeling, and you can get things done over 1 or 2 quarters, where you can see some real true value to that POC. And again, I apologize, guys. I'll talk about this stuff all day. Simran, you have another question for us?
I do. Yes, I do have another question, and I think this one is for you, John. Does the AI software export data from all business processes like maintenance, SAP, accounting, labor repair, hours history, breakdown history? These are some of the examples they've mentioned.
Yeah, what I would say is amen that you're thinking that way. The answer is yes. All data is good data. The question is it relative? And depending upon the use case and the modeling, it can be used for all that. And in terms of taking that, Jatinear talked about, creating that data lake, and being able to push the information from there. Absolutely, the AI model, the AI piece is really looking at it, analyzing it, giving you results. Where those results go and what actions come from that and which databases it feeds, that's all possible. We've seen it across the entire ecosystem. Jatinear, how about you?
No, I was agreeing with what you were saying, and you're talking about, spot on unifying that data, bringing it into some consolidated source so that you can do actionable insights, right, in advanced analytics. But when you export, some of those data components will be in a system where you can tie some type of API connection, just software driven, right? But other components, other systems might be, or other widgets might be like sensors and PLC connectors and things that are actually on a machinery where you want to pull that data into, so you can join it and marry it with operational data that you already have to create that AI model. That's that 30% that we were talking about, that IoT devices, PLC sensors, et cetera, because you want to get that configured to get that data coming in.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Awesome.
Now, I have a lot of questions. Maybe we can take 2 more of them. But the next question is here. Do you find clients who are concerned with how their data is utilized in the AI environment?
Yeah, 100%. And I would say the first thing to make sure with whatever provider you're working with or whoever technology solution person you're talking with, making sure you're keeping it contained. And by that, I mean you're keeping it within the organization. There is absolutely an opportunity to look at third-party data and pull that into the information, but you have to think about this as a contained model. You don't want to start, in a knowledge chat type internal discussion thing. You don't want to be searching the internet to figure out what the best fix is for this for this piece of equipment or that machinery. Plus, you have industry related secrets and privacy and all that, proprietary information you want to keep to yourselves. So yeah, containment is critical. Jatinear, what about you?
Yeah, so there's a big growing movement on AI ethics. It's huge. I'm in a couple of the groups too. Just trying to get involved so I can be at the beginning phases of it. But you hear Microsoft has launched a lot of opportunities where they're trying to get more AI researchers. And they're getting these researchers because they're focusing on the ethics. There's ethics internally, and more internally is more compliance, right? And making sure, to some of the things John just spoke about make sure the data doesn't get out, how you're shaking and moving the data. But externally, when you start building out AI models and things, if it's business based, customer facing, exposing it, ethics has to completely be in there. So you want to make sure that someone's putting an ethical eye on there, because if you don't, you can open yourself up to a lot of lawsuits based on whatever you're pushing out. And I can talk about that for days. I know we don't have time for that, but I would say getting compliance involved with what data is being pushed and pulled is the first thing. Secondly, if it's going to be anything externally, you want to make sure that someone puts an ethical eye on that AI solution.
All right. So we are almost at the end, but there is this one question. I mean, we have a lot of questions, but there's one question which is my favorite amongst everything that we received today, and you'll see why. So I have to ask you guys this, and maybe, we can send out the detailed answer later, but I'm still going to go for it. So this is a question from one of our audiences. A friend of mine has a microbrewery where everything is done by hand. I want to encourage him to start collecting data simply and cheaply. For example, cheap sensors connected by Wi-Fi for eventually use in anomaly detection and predictive maintenance. But I'm not sure where to start. Any suggestions?
Yeah, I think Jatinear and I have to visit this place together, and we can come up with a comprehensive solution and start off that way. But no, I think you're on the right path, right? You're when you talk about maybe some cheap sensors, making sure what output's coming out of those vats or what's going into them. Think about what's critical to the process. What are those measurable data pieces you think would be important to helping that business either quantify what they're doing right or find what they're doing wrong. Heat sensors on the vats, on the fermenting tanks. I mean, there's a lot of good hardware out there today that doesn't cost a whole lot. There's different IoT platforms that you can use for fairly little cost just to start something up. I think we're going to share contact information after this, so I think either one of us would be happy to talk through that, because that sounds like a real fun use case.
That does sound like a fun one, but to the point, like you said, keep it cheap. I would even go as far as, if I were that person, to actually Nussbaum. Paul Nussbaum. That name sounds real familiar. It sounds like the major who was over a squadron when I was active duty. If that's you, just give a thumbs up. But what I would do is actually go real cheap, and I would first start doing some research on what kind of KPIs you would need for a brewery to be successful, right? And once you do that, you can start to understand what kind of data elements you want to capture. So you don't have to go buy a bunch of small IoT devices. You can focus the IoT devices on one thing, right? On one machine, to make sure that, because when you build out something, there's like two proof of concepts. There's one proof of concept just to realize the business value, but there's the first proof of concept to make sure that whatever kind of architecture, whatever kind of components you want to buy works, right? So you can get some small components to figure out on one machine. I want to understand and see if there's gaps in the process of my brewery when it flows, or whatever you want to do, right? Just do that. tie it to some data, get the data coming in, analyzing the data, prove out that KPI, and he say, okay, I got something here. Now I'm going to scale it. I'm going to start adding more little IoT devices and sensors onto components, start bringing in more data and build my data model. You can get things like Power BI to help you model that data. If it's just, for his thing, he can start building and playing with things that way. But that's a cheap solution to do it, in my opinion.
Perfect. I think the next time when you have this discussion, you can do it over beer.
Absolutely.
So, all right. I think with that, we will end the Q&A round for today. There were a couple of questions that we were not able to get to, but we'll make sure that we answer them and we send the responses to you. So with that, thank you, John. Thank you, Jatinear. It was a great discussion. And thank you for being an amazing audience, everyone. We hope you found this valuable and inspiring. If you have any other any questions about TMAP or any of the things that we discussed today, please visit our website. You can also connect with our speakers through LinkedIn. Thank you once again for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you in our future events. Have a great day.